Nigeria's export trade has increased by over 60% to 5.9 billion US dollars in the second quarter of the year. Latest data from the National Bureau of Statistics shows the trade deficit narrowed 44% as the value of exports surged after a devaluation of the naira. However, the rise was not enough to help the economy avoid a recession. Low oil prices have hammered vital public finances, and the naira, of course, prompting foreign investors to flee bond and equity markets, causing, of course, a chronic dollar shortages in the country. Meanwhile, exports were dominated by crude oil, which contributed 79.7% of total exports. Imports rose 38.1% in the second quarter, with machinery and appliances, vehicles and aircraft parts, and petroleum products making up the bulk of the numbers. Now, Deji Badmus joins us in Lagos with more on this data. Deji, as always, you're welcome to the show. Now, we know the improvement in export numbers we're hearing about is largely due to the depreciation in the value of the naira. But what exactly does this latest release mean for the economy?
Well, Uche, I don't think it will make any difference that much for the economy, an economy that is now in recession. But you take a look at that the numbers now, as you've been reporting. I mean, it clearly shows what the government has been saying, that it actually needs to do a lot to, improve the non-oil export of this country. You look at the non-oil sector. I mean, we're talking about the export trade now. As you've been reporting, of course, oil still dominates the export trade. You look at the non-oil export, bringing in quite some, the figure there quite abysmal. It clearly shows that that's the sector that Nigeria needs to grow, and that the only reason why, or one of the basic reasons, or the major reason why this economy is facing recession at the moment is just because of the price of oil in the international oil market crashing. So imagine, for instance, if oil was not the dominant export in this country, the story would probably have been different. And that's the reason why the government has been hammering on the fact that it needs to grow the non-oil sector, and it needs to increase the volume of export in that sector so that Nigeria can begin to earn enough foreign exchange from that sector and not rely on, oil that, of course, it has no power at all to fix the price. So it's a clear indication that, things are still not too good for Nigeria, that we actually need to grow the non-oil export sector. And, of course, as you've been reporting, this has basically, the increase, of course, has basically been aided by the depreciation in the value of the naira, also in the value of imports as well. Nothing will change, but a clear sign that Nigeria needs to work on its non-oil export and grow it to a level where it will begin to earn enough foreign exchange for this country.
Now, Deji, of course, we know inflation continues to rise. It rose to about 17.1% in July, its highest rate since October 2005. We heard President Buhari was speaking yesterday to Nigerians, of course, about the rising prices and how it's impacting them and the economy. What has been the reaction to his encouraging words? He sort of encouraged Nigerians, saying that they should not despair in the face of these current economic adversities. What has been the reaction, of course, to this news and President Buhari's speech? Give us a picture of what's going on ground.
Well, first, Uche, Nigerians are pretty divided over the handling of the economy. There are those who think this government isn't handling the economy well. There are those who think the government is doing a very good job, and that it's, the difficult period now, it's only a matter of time, and that things would get better. Of course, that has been the reaction. That has been the kind of reception that President Buhari's message has received. For those who have been supporting him, they think they say that what he said is actually the truth, that in no time at all that the country will come out of recession. But then for those who are not in support of him, they think he's just not done a good job of the economy at all. And let me just quickly say something about the inflation figure you talked about, 17.1%, of course, high. But what we're beginning to see, Uche, is that we're beginning to see some kind of a moderation, because initially a lot of people had thought when the figures for the second quarter was released that inflation figure was going to be high as probably 19, close to 20%. but of course 7%, not so high. And what the government has been saying now is that the inflation we have in the country today is actually cost push. I mean, there was this increase in electricity tariff, increase in the price of petrol, and that, of course, resulted in the inflation we're having now. And so what the government has been explaining is that, look, what it needs to do is not monetary policy related, that what it needs to do, what it needs is fiscal policy. It needs to do, it needs to invest in the infrastructure sector, grow that sector of the economy, and then we would see some kind of moderation. But with what we have seen with the inflation figure, Uche, probably by the third quarter, things will just, that's what some people are predicting, some experts now, that things will just moderate itself and the situation would simply balance out. But we just have to wait and see. But fact is that Nigeria needs to invest a lot in infrastructure, and that's what this government says it is doing. And that's why President Buhari has continued to say that, look, it's just a matter of time that Nigeria will get out of this recession.
Well, certainly we'll keep watching it. Many thanks, Deji, for those insights. Of course, Deji Badmus joining us there in Lagos.